start recording again. Okay.
Cool.
So, all right. So we're good. I actually just got, man. Oh, I have to go get a book. I just got off the phone with Tom. Like, I love that guy. Okay.
Yeah, he's
so
great.
We could talk forever, but I want to go get Talamy's book because he's definitely interested in Doug Talamy's work. So hold on. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves.
Hey, Andy, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you today?
Not bad.
Yeah, I'm just, Lori was doing another meeting, so I got on my other computer so I could continue to do some business work.
Who wants to do business work? That's no fun.
Yeah,
one of my sales managers is out in Arizona, so his time frame isn't the same as mine.
Is he always out in Arizona? That's like where he always is?
That's where he lives, but he travels all over. So
okay.
It's the manager of X Chair, in case you've ever seen the X Chair commercials.
No, I don't watch TV.
Yeah, me either.
There have been some in the mail too.
I don't read mail.
Yeah, they usually check. Normally bills, not checks.
Yeah, for sure.
Off the grid.
Yep, try to be anyhow.
Oh, goodness.
So this should be good tonight. I'm excited. They're gonna, I think it's gonna be really cool. And a little iffy about how we're gonna handle the quick question and answer afterwards, because he was hoping to have sort of conversation with people to find out like what the next steps would be, as far as like volunteers, like what they would think would be the next steps. So we might, if people have a lot to say, I might allow them to talk individually.
Like actually open it up so people can like use their webcams and microphones?
Well, I can promote somebody to co-host so they can. I don't know that I want to do it with everybody because they're not prepared for that. And I don't think that's fair. But if somebody is like, yeah, I have some really great suggestions, I can say, hey, Pam, we can allow you to speak. Let me just open that up and see if that works. I mean, I know it'll work, but I don't want to do it to everybody, just selectively if it goes that way. So yeah, I think we're just going to play it by ear.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can also like we always do, we can be sort of keeping an eye on the Q&A, and if they want a discussion, then maybe during pauses, we can just say, oh, hey, so-and-so had a question or a comment or something.
Yep.
Are they getting on early or are they getting on right at 7?
I said, come on. Yeah, whenever. So, and I told them we go live at about now. So we will go live soon. So the only difference tonight, as far as the flow, is that Andy, you'll go through the quick slides, right? I'll just, let me see if I can show you real quick what they look like. Just that we'll be announcing July's presenter soon. We are hoping for Amy doing rain gardens, but that hasn't been confirmed yet, so we can't really say it. Membership, we support non-woodland owners. This is what forest stewardship is, right? Because we wanted to kind of keep that in people's minds, right? Join today, and then it goes to Kieran, who's going to introduce the presenters.
Okay.
All right. Is that good?
Yeah. Did you see my email from Tony?
I did. Oh. Yay.
Still waiting.
Yep. So hi, Deborah. How are you?
You're
very, very good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're excited.
Thanks for inviting us.
It's great.
Do you want me to read your like the description of SJC and your full bios, yours and Tom's, to introduce you, or do you want me to keep something short because you're going to do your own introduction? How do you want me to do it?
I'd like it if you did it a bit.
Okay.
You're the cherished advisor. So, so this is a test for you. Do you know who we are?
Well, I have my cheat sheet all ready to go. And better.
Okay. Thank you. That would be awesome.
No, sounds good.
And Deborah, I told Tom earlier.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? Glad to meet you.
Nice to be here. Yes.
You're not. The rest of us are moving. You're not moving at all.
So that's my mock. Okay. Is that a little better?
That's better. Just wanted to make sure there was a real person behind that very nice photo. So
thank you so much.
Just want to make sure it wasn't a cardboard cutout.
I walk the streets, holding that up. I do. Okay.
Right. So Deborah, I did let Tom know earlier that we are recording this presentation. So what we'll do
Oh, that's
after
awesome.
I pull it down, I'll be happy to share it with you. You can do with it as you please.
I appreciate that. Do you capture the, because we're going to shift gears here a little bit. We had a conversation prior with Kieran. Tom and I just touched base, he understanding that given the webinar nature of this, you know, what we were hoping to garner back was some feedback from who's on with us. So I'm going to invite people to submit that via the chat. Is it the case that you capture the chat in any which way, or should we be doing that?
It does capture it. It's I haven't found that it's been like 100%. It's kind of weird what it captures, but yeah, we do get a text file after the webinar is over. So I'm happy to share that with you as well.
Yeah,
okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, so I'm going to go live just so people can get settled in. We can still chat amongst ourselves, but I'd just like to have, get on early enough so people can, get settled in. So
okay, I'm going to turn my video and mute for a moment. I'm going to get a glass of water. I will be right back.
Okay, excellent. And then the rest of us that are not going to be presenting, once we're done, we'll mute ourselves and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, so we're going live. And
yes, I see Tom's name is there. He's muted, but welcome,
hey, sorry,
Tom.
I was just, well, how's it going? I was just eating a little bit of food.
Oh, no problem.
Jealous.
Just a pita for now, just to hold me over.
Yeah, I hear you. So Tom, I have to show you this because we just talked about this. So highly recommend Nature's Best Hope by Dr. Doug Tallamy. Okay. And another book that you might be interested in, he just came out with a book on oaks. So
I saw that. I saw that on looking at his list of books. So I have these. I'm actually just going on vacation next week. So I definitely need some good books for vacation. I have a whole list, but this is getting added to it. So
okay. Excellent. Yeah. And I think when I have him present, it's beginning of September in person. I think I'm going to ask him to do something about the oak, his new book. So stay tuned for details on that.
It's about oaks, oak trees.
Oak trees. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're a real keystone species.
Yes. Wow. Highest, right? What I'll have to find the
highest biodiversity, I think.
Thank you. Yeah.
Of like basically more animals and fungi and everything else colonize and use oaks than I think any other genus.
Yes.
I'll never do that.
Yes.
So
it's in this book somewhere.
So like caterpillars.
What is that book?
It's called Nature's Best Hope by Dr. Doug Tallamy.
Okay.
So he's kind of my hero, and he's presenting for one of my organizations in September in person. So I told Tom I'll let you all know about it when it comes up. But
very
yeah,
good.
he's a University of Delaware, I believe. He is a professor there, and he's just a great guy.
I attended the University of Delaware.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So
the world gets smaller every day.
Yes, for sure. So I just wanted to stop and just welcome all of our attendees. I haven't been paying much attention to you, so welcome. And we'll get started in just a minute, actually. We just want to give people a little bit more time to sign on. It was such a nice day. I have a feeling like everybody's probably coming in from outside at this point.
It was a gorgeous day, right?
Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Are we still expecting a heat wave this weekend? I've been head down. What are they saying? I happen to be traveling, so I was curious about it.
I do believe they say that the humidity is going to come back a little bit tomorrow, and I do think it's going to kind of reach the 90s over the next day or two. So yeah, this was it. This was our little break. So.
Okay.
Well, we have been getting a lot of rain. It's been a pretty wet spring, so we'll see what happens.
My garden is loving it.
Yeah, the lawn gets mowed more than once a week.
There you go. So let's see, it's 7:02. We should probably get going, so we are respectful of people's time. So are we ready to begin, everybody?
We are ready.
All right.
Ready.
So I will just start with a quick introduction. So hi, everybody. My name is Lori Jensen, the New Jersey Forestry Association. We're really glad you're here tonight. Just a couple little things to know about the webinar, that we are recording this webinar and we will send it back to you as a link after the fact. So that's good. So you don't have to feverishly write down questions. We will actually provide you a recording of it later. There is a chat and a Q&A, and we hope that you all are very active in both. So stop by the chat and say hi to us. And if you have any questions for the presenters, feel free to pop them in the Q&A at any time, and we'll answer them throughout. So that's it for little housekeeping, and I'm pleased to introduce Andy Kim. Andy, you want to take it away?
Good evening, everybody. As Lori said, I'm Andy Kim. I am the president of the New Jersey Forestry Association, and welcome to the June episode of Backyard Forestry in 90 Minutes. As you probably may be aware, this is a program that was originally held in person. We had Backyard Forestry started at the Forest Resource Education, or commonly known as the FREC in Jackson, New Jersey. And then we opened a second one for Backyard Forestry North in Morristown. All of those things have been put on hold because we can't get there in person. Those particular places are closed. But we are finding that we can really attract more people and address more people online. So this has been a very good conversion for us. So welcome this evening, and we look forward to another great presentation. We will have another Backyard Forestry session in July, on July 15th, working on a couple of topics that we're just in the process of finalizing, and we will get word out to everybody electronically as soon as that is actually finalized. And again, in August, we've got several topics that are on the schedule. We just haven't been able to finalize the times and dates. We know the dates and times, but just get the presenters all lined up and ready to go. One of the interesting things, we're finding the topics are great to come up with, but sometimes it's not as easy to get presenters.
So you should be keeping the third Thursday of each month on your calendar, because that's when Backyard Forestry webinar is being held, every third Thursday of the month from 7 to 8:30.
Okie dokie. So New Jersey Forestry Association was founded primarily to be the voice of woodland owners, to address their needs, to represent them in Trenton and other things like that. Membership includes newsletters, the website. We do have an annual meeting, which we did not have in 2020. This year was virtual. We also sponsor the New Jersey Woodland Stewards Program, which is a 3.5-day in-person camp for adults who want to learn more about forest and forest-related topics. It has been in the past held at Camp Linwood McDonald in Sussex County. We're not quite sure whether we're going to be able to do it in 2021. A lot depends on if the camp is available. And one of our concerns also is whether people will want to, by the end of September, will be willing to go out and spend 3.5 days together, or if we have to come up with some kind of hybrid. But one way or another, we do the Woodland Stewards Program. It's Forestry 101. The Backyard Forestry 90 Minutes is what we're doing tonight. We do it the third Thursday of each month. We do represent landowners in Trenton. We recently also became members of the New Jersey Green Industry Council, and they do have people following legislation and working as our support people, our liaisons to Trenton. And they also help with the legislative monitoring. So they are helping us guide us through any legislation that may be coming up that will be of impact to woodland owners, or actually to forests in general. So we are monitoring all of that. And we do provide legislation testimony if there's a bill or bills, and actually there's several bills right now that we have provided testimony on. So that's part of what we do in support of the forest landowners. We also support non-woodland owners, and part of that is Backyard Forestry 90 Minutes. Part of that is the Woodland Stewards Program, which is open to everybody. We are really trying to support people, encouraging fresh air, clean water, recreation, wildlife habitat, and forestry education. So, we're trying to reach a lot of people, not just woodland owners. So what is forest stewardship? And we've put this together. Forest stewardship is the wise management and use of our forest resources to ensure their health and productivity for years to come. And then from the New Jersey Forest Stewardship Act, management of the forest land and its natural resources shall be based on the principle of conservation. That is, the plan shall be designed to sustain the productivity of the forest and land and its natural resources in perpetuity. And that in perpetuity is very important to us. It's we're trying to make sure that the forests are healthy and resilient. So if you are not a member of New Jersey Forestry Association, we do invite you and encourage you to join. You can see the website there, www.njforestry.org. We would welcome members who, in addition to this type of session, the Backyard Forestry on the third Thursday of each month, we are also having quarterly member-only meetings. So we'll talk about topics that are really of very particular interest to woodland owners, but we will be talking about some things. Some of the upcoming sessions will deal with prescribed burn and that tool to help support healthy forests. We'll be talking about deer management. We'll be talking about pesticides, things like that. So those are topics that we may not get to in backyard forestry, but they certainly will be part of what we need to talk about with the forest landowners. So if those are topics that are of interest to you and you want to hear them, join the association. We welcome you. With that, I will turn this over to Kieran Hunt. Kieran is one of the members of the board of directors of the New Jersey Forestry Association. Has done some great presentations as well for backyard forestry. Who have seen some of our recent presentations. They were done by Kieran. So Kieran, take it away.
Thanks, Andy. I have the privilege of introducing Deb and Tom from Sustainable Jersey City. So I'll give you a little intro and then they'll take it away. Sustainable Jersey City, or SJC, is a catalyst organization whose mission is to educate, empower, and activate community stakeholders to make Jersey City, New Jersey, and the region a more sustainable and resilient place to live and work. Their vision is for Jersey City to become the greenest, most sustainable, and resilient city in New Jersey, with community stakeholders that are educated about and committed to environmental, economic, and social justice. Their programming focus is emissions reduction, green infrastructure, and waste streams, where central activities are developing and executing public-facing education projects, such as the SJC tree mapping census and stewardship projects, residential trash redux, including community composting, and campaigns directed at moving the needle through engagement strategies they cultivate for specified target audiences, such as their Go Green business campaign, where they are networking small and medium-sized businesses to share best practices as they pursue sustainability initiatives for their business operations. Now, if that sounds like a lot, it's because it is. They're a really impressive organization, and just in the small time that I've been involved with SJC and their open tree mapping project, which they're going to share with you tonight, I'm so impressed with what they've been able to accomplish through community involvement, and just the sheer number of people they've gotten involved in managing trees and caring for green infrastructure around the city is amazing. It's something I haven't really seen anywhere else in the country. So it's really impressive what they've been doing out there. And so Deb Italiano, founder and chair of Sustainable Jersey City, is passionate about urban sustainability and the power of community networks. She spearheaded SJC's nonprofit mission since 2011, which is focused on developing a broad platform for community engagement, bringing resources to stakeholder groups for green neighborhood initiatives, and structuring a framework for ongoing civic leadership and sustainability-focused education opportunities. She's lead AP and is managing principal of Marintra Co. LLC, a strategic business and market development consulting firm based in Jersey City that she founded in 2003. And prior to that, she spent 15 years on Wall Street, leading large-scale change initiatives related to governance and strategy alignment for both Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan Chase. She now works with green economy clients to build their business and brand equity through sustainability measures and through high-impact collaborative enterprise initiatives, which benefit the communities in which they operate. She received her BS from Pace University in New York City. And Tom Zinkrath is a software developer with extensive experience building data systems for the financial services industry. He has a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's degree in stochastic systems and optimization. He has a passion for the sustainability field, primarily in renewable energy. As an SJC board member and tech lead, Tom spends most of his time on the technology front. He manages everything from open source projects to general tech support for the organization, and he continues to enhance SJC OpenTreeMap and push SJC technology forward to enable programming for SJC's portfolio of educational advocacy and outreach initiatives, which include both community-facing projects and internal capacity building to streamline and enhance program delivery. He hopes to use his energy and expertise to help the citizen science movement in Jersey City through a combination of technology and education for a green civics tech initiative. In addition to working with SJC, Tom volunteers at the American Museum of Natural History as an explainer for biodiversity and conservation to help educate and spread the message of conservation and sustainability. Tom believes that his passion for programming, data, teaching, and learning are all vital pieces that can help the sustainability movement, and I can't agree more. With that, you two can take it away.
Okay, and I stopped sharing my screen so you guys can share yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Deb Italiano here. Kieran, that was a wonderful introduction. Appreciate that a lot. This evening, what we're going to do is tag team a little bit. I'm going to take on the first part of walking you through the presentation. This is a bit informal. We're using this as an outline for the discussion. So we're going to, jump out of the presentation a little bit, and I'm going to take you in a moment to SJC's website. After I go through a few of these, highlighted items, I'm going to hand it over to Tom, who's going to bring you through some of the, and you'll all understand this, it's not in tech terms, but what we've been up to with our platform from a technology perspective. So let's go to the first slide here. Okay, so Ozavia is a small software development company out of Philly. Potentially people have heard of the OpenTreeMap. It's used by some major cities across the country. Ozavia started with Philadelphia, and they've expanded to, I think, maybe a dozen clients across the country. In 2015, Jersey City's Environmental Commission did a canopy study. And we had assessed at that time that we had 17% canopy cover. And we, felt that that was pretty low. And there were some goals that were set to try to increment that to 20% cover. Unfortunately, a lack of resources prevailed. And what showed up is frankly a deterioration trend in our canopy. We're now down to 10.9%. So while SJC brought the Ozavia version of their OpenTreeMap to the city to pilot back in 2016, and we did that for a couple of years, after we investigated who was using what across the country. We wanted something community facing. We wanted to engage the public, and we wanted to, have it be educational. We decided on the OpenTreeMap, but we weren't sure how to teach it, and how we could expand the usage of it. Basically, the Environmental Commission asked us to help ground truth, if you will, their satellite study, right? So get into being on the ground and get into counting mode, right? With some inventory framework. And, when I asked, well, sure, no problem, we'll help you out. What tool do you have? And they said, well, we don't have a tool. So that kicked us in that direction. We spent a couple of years, frankly, working with different opportunities to educate the public to understand how people learn this, what the best approach was. We worked with, for example, college faculty teaching college students, then college students teaching high school students, and then high school students and college students coming in to teach neighborhood associations and conservancy, park conservancy groups. So we learned an awful lot about what worked and what didn't work in terms of handing the reins to the public on a citizen science initiative, which is basically what this is. Citizen science, as probably most of you know, but in case there are some folks who do not, it's basically crowdsourcing data by the public who you know, you train up to a particular degree. A lot of you are exposed to what other cities are doing when they do a tree census. They engage the public, there's some training, and then everybody goes out to count and identify and inventory, you know, the tree inventory. So, you know, what we did was start to look at using that same tool when we discovered that there was this deterioration trend happening. We knew that was going on because we, you know, operate very close to the ground. We're a grassroots, you know, educational outreach organization. So we're engaged at the neighborhood level, if you will. And Jersey City has had the highest rate of new development in the state over the last 5 or 6 years. There are a lot of trees that were coming down. It was the case that we have a bit of an attrition rate also going on. So what we did was take up a three-pronged effort, looking for more progressive legislation. We sit on the Jersey City Shade Tree Committee. We're one of 2 community organizations sitting on that committee. And we took a couple of years starting in 2018 because there were 84 mature trees that came down, and it was kind of the catalyst for us, and a public walkway where that was a 10-year battle, if you will. From our side of the fence, we were trying to save those trees and prevent the management company for who was responsible for caretaking those trees from cutting them down. We brought in the New Jersey Tree Foundation, a couple of arborists. We had the couple of city officials who said, there's no way these trees are coming out. You know, all we need to do is trim the roots a bit to, you know, correct the issue about pulling up some of the boards on the walkway, put in some permeable pavers, and we'll be all set. Well, we lost that battle, and it really got us on our horse because there was a transition in city officials, and the stance changed. And when we were first looking at correcting that problem at the beginning of that cycle, it was going to cost residents who lived in that area who you know, were responsible for maintenance fees, including the walkway, right? So that's who, even though it was a public access walkway, like a park or a plaza, the deal that was made by the developer appointed this private entity to maintain the, you know, the walkway, but it's actually regulated under state law under the, I forget the, and I can, you know, send that off to you, Kieran, but there's a state regulation that makes anyone an entity that is responsible for public access right of way, vegetation, and open space entity, which, you know, can be regulated by the state, and the municipality has the right to jump in and do what's needed and basically assess, you know, a bill for whatever it is to make sure that everything is up and running and proper and there are no liability issues. However, in the end, it was decided that to correct the issue was going to, and they let this go for many years, going to be too complicated, even though in the last year before the decision was made, the New Jersey Tree Foundation was still saying these trees do not need to come down. So it was originally going to cost about $250,000 to correct the problem, and it wound up costing $1.2 million, which was a bonus for the contractor involved, which I don't even want to get involved in that discussion because it's just really nutty how that decision was made. So that kicked off a 2-year effort on our part to put together more progressive legislation. We got a lot of community input, spent an awful lot of time. That was sponsored through one of the council members. And we also, started to look at what data was being collected. And we noticed that it was a lot of back of the envelope stuff. So the idea of creating a data repository where there can be, where there could be a framework for proper decision making was really coupled with this idea that there was an opportunity to also bring funding to start to restore the canopy, but we needed the data to support efforts to bring in funding, right? So it went hand in hand. So our 3-pronged effort kicked off in the first quarter of 2020, bringing online what was, and Tom's going to talk a little bit about when he got started with this adventure within SJC, but we really began pulling that platform together in 2019. We had asked the city to resubscribe to the tool. They said no, they liked the back of the envelope approach. So we said, fine, what we'll do is host it ourselves, and we took it back, and we are now hosting it today in a customized form for the city of Jersey City, taking out all the various bugs and really, putting together something, much more advanced. So we kicked off last Earth Day, the We Can't Manage or What We Don't Measure campaign. It's historic for Jersey City. They've never done a tree census here. If we just go to the project webpage, Tom, basically this is a huge engagement strategy, right? And the way that we operate, what we've always found, and this is our 10th year anniversary, right? So our approach is that the strongest form of engagement, in addition to making things fun, is to educate people, right? If they're learning, they are happy. So here what we did was structure a training program and put them through the rigor of that. If we just go back up for a moment, the what's going on section, right? Well, let's actually go to the top. The way that the program is run, we have people, fill out a form, which is the main registry that affiliates them with a neighborhood. We have 35 neighborhoods across Jersey City. We have a neighborhood captain or 2 for each neighborhood. When we don't have a captain in a few of these, we crowdsource the effort. People are all collaborating. When your neighborhood is done, you move on to the neighborhood next door, right? So we have an approach, and we launched this during COVID, and we crossed our fingers and threw everybody in the pond with a Zoom training, right? For 90 minutes, I guess it was. We said you could do this on your own, but we're going to do some remote coaching. And we had a messaging app, which is still in use today because it was very successful, called GroupMe. There was a walkie-talkie mechanism between neighborhood captains and their tree mappers, right? And it's transparent, so tree mappers can also see the other tree mappers in the neighborhood, what their questions are and what they're doing. So we held our breath for 30 days, hoping that the platform wouldn't implode and that people were okay on their own, not being handheld, which we've transitioned a little bit, which I'll get into in a moment. And it worked out beautifully. So we did another training. The first training was 150 people. The second training was another 150 people. Today we have about 500 people who have been trained in basically a 90-minute format talking about the overview of the program, what we're trying to accomplish, the use of the tool, background on how to identify trees, and we'll take you through the kind of data that we're collecting. But confidence building is a big piece of this. There are a lot of people who, said they don't know anything about trees. How can I help here? I'm not an expert. Well, we bring it down to the basics, and we have a verification process for the data that's going into the system, which Tom is going to talk about. So we gave them a lot of confidence that they could participate, they can contribute, they could learn, and we needed them now. Go, go, go. And we created some momentum and energy around the conversation. And during COVID, it was a bonus because people could not hug each other, but they could go out and hug a tree, right? They could do that on their own. They could do it with their partner. They could do it with their kids. So it was very successful during COVID, that very first season. We basically inventoried about half of the trees in Jersey City, right? Our goal is basically to complete the inventory this year. So it was set up as a 2-year census project, right? While what we wanted to do was capture, for the most part, what the Jersey City Forester is responsible for, which are street trees. There is a different staff that is responsible for park trees. And ultimately, because we're a sustainability organization, we want those sustainability metrics for the canopy at large. So in fact, what we've begun to do is also map some private spaces, like a couple of the college campuses in town, cemeteries, which were, if any of you recall this, the original parks, right? So they have a lot of trees. So we've just taken up the flag and we're running like banshees this season to get this thing done. We've partnered with the main parks organization, the Jersey City Parks Coalition. We've nominated park captains for our neighborhood captains to partner with. We've so far, and Kieran has warned us that this can get very complicated, but we've been working our way up to the larger parks by hitting up all the smaller parks, and we've been doing pretty well with the medium-sized parks. So we feel like we are accomplishing, with the leadership of the neighborhood captains and park captains, who devise a method, if you will, to progress teams through a park area, right, section by section. So if we go down here a little bit and we talk, we gave people the opportunity at the top of the page here, which we broadcast like crazy. We're very active on social media. We do email marketing, and we made this widely available, not only directly from us, but through other community organizations. We gave people in this section of the program overview the background, what's really going on in Jersey City. Here's the old canopy study. Here's the assessment we did recently. We have a deterioration trend, not good, folks. Here's what we're going to do about that. Let's start to collect some data, provide a basis to do canopy restoration for decision makers. So we kicked that off. It was completely on our own. We have since done quite a lot of analysis, and Tom's going to talk a little bit later on about the GIS reporting that we're generating and the mapping that's affiliated with the main map here. But one of the discoveries, and we have a couple of GIS specialists in our stable, is that we have an urban heat island issue happening in Jersey City, right? And it's not unlike the UHI, urban heat island effect, that you would have read about. It is oftentimes, and just to sum that up, the reason the UHI occurs, particularly in urban areas, is a function of, for example, you know, impermeable pavements, concrete, asphalt, building, you know, buildings that are made of some of this dark, you know, building materials or heat absorbing building materials like concrete, and the lack of trees and shade, right? And frankly, you know, another, you know, cooling element, you have green infrastructure at large, which oftentimes includes rain gardens or bioswales. So you have some moisture, some water going on. So we have a dry concrete city with a receding canopy, right? That's what's going on with the UHI here. So what we did was suggest to ourselves, hey, we can get a grant to study this in a deeper way. We went out, applied for it, got it, corporate grant from Unilever. That was focused entirely on delivering, you know, an assessment with more efficacy data for the UHI condition in Jersey City. Urban heat island extreme heat conditions actually exacerbate air quality. So we have in Jersey City the highest rate of adult asthma in the county. And we have, we're neck and neck with Newark as the highest, you know, having the highest rate of childhood asthma in the state. So where is this coming from, right? It's not like we have major truck routes coming into a corridor like the port, like, you know, Newark, or the airport like Elizabeth. Right? So where is this coming from? Well, these cumulative air impacts are coming over from Newark and Elizabeth. So what we did was threw them on the grant proposal. So we have a tri-city UHI study going on. And I invited the Rutgers Environmental and Occupational Health Institute, who does a lot of air monitoring around the state, to join us. We had no money. So we asked them to jump in kind, to lend us some equipment and to do monitoring alongside of CAPA Strategies, who are the go-to people in the country for UHI studies, and to do that all for free, pro bono. And they said, sure. So we have a, you know, a couple of studies going on this summer that are going to be extraordinarily comprehensive. It's a tri-city cohort, and we've now been adopted into a national cohort, NOAA and the NIHHIS. If we just click on this section here where it says one reason why the tree canopy matters, there's an explanation of the urban heat island effect, but the 3 bullets that follow give you the narrative, basically the background, how we got the grant, the national cohort that we're a part of, and specifically how we've summarized, and this might be of interest to some people, what some of our communications look like. So where it says that we're, you know, knocking on people's doors, suggesting, hey, why don't you participate? We give them a summary document saying this is what this is, with some visuals and video, and we give them an opportunity to offer feedback about their neighborhood where they're experiencing extreme heat or air quality issues, and very specifically also, where do they, you know, go to shelter from those extreme conditions. So, you know, we are very excited about the level of community engagement around this conversation, and it should be no surprise to folks that it's actually an environmental and social justice issue, right? Oftentimes the lack of trees, which is something that's left over from the redlining days, you know, occurs in lower income and ethnic or minority neighborhoods. You know, Jersey City is so diverse, you know, to suggest that these are minorities. We probably are a microcosm of what New York City looks like, right? So similarly for Newark and Elizabeth. And what we've discovered, and we've taken a deep dive to do a pre-assessment on this, is that, with some correlations, that where the urban heat island is occurring in Jersey City happens to be in those same asthma corridors, right? So we are looking at stuff like, we have a cadre of resources that we're using from the federal government and regionally to look at, some of these conditions on the ground that would look like socioeconomic, profiles. In fact, we are developing a social vulnerability index that's embedded with environmental data. So it's something that we are evolving. Just that alone recently had the Health and Human Services Department for the City of Jersey City and the Jersey City Housing Authority partner with us. They are very excited that we're doing this. We couldn't get anyone to listen to any of this, not even the folks on the Shade Tree Committee or the Environmental Commission or the Sustainability Office before. We now have two major partners within the city, and we're a month away. We're going to do this study on July 24th. Tom and another member of our team, Jason, using some of the tools the federal government provided to look at what the hottest day of the year is going to be and where there's very little precipitation or cloud cover to optimize our efforts. Two of the hottest days of the year are going to be July 24th and July 31st. We backed into a range of dates to do this on a Saturday because this is going to be entirely run by volunteers from both Unilever and community stakeholders in each of the three cities. So we can talk about how the study is being done, but it's a mobile study. It's being pushed out through driving routes that are designed by CAPA strategies with metrics, data collected 3 different times of the day in 3 different sections of each city. So we should have something very robust at the end of this, and we'll move in the fall to start to make recommendations around cooling strategies, which of course one of those is going to be prioritizing where we want to replenish the canopy. So all of this is lining up with the sort of icing on the cake. In the fall, we'll be working with the University of Vermont Spatial Analytics Lab, who's an education partner of ours. They did the original assessment we turned over to the city at the beginning of last year, just before COVID hit, to say, hey, here's our assessment in the moment. This is the trend. It's not good. By the way, here's a package of legislation changes that we're, hopeful about. Please consider this. And by the way, we're kicking off a tree census. Ready, set, go. So we did these 3 things in the first quarter of last year, and we haven't stopped. We took the winter to do a lot of education. So we went through the spring, kicked off on Earth Day, through the spring, summer, and fall, got to about half the inventory. And then, part of our engagement strategy was to make sure that we were in communication with these citizen scientists all winter long, right? So we did 8 webinars, talking about, tree identification, talking about stewardship, the range of what it is that we wanted them to know about and be inspired by. And we put those on. So if we go back to the website page, what we've done is make these available in recorded fashion to the public. So those folks who are already working with us, or those folks that want to learn more about trees, everything from tip sheet to a brochure to the webinar recordings. We're giving people multiple ways to access knowledge and information and reference guides, right? That is key. So you guys could look at this anytime you know, in your own time, you care to. You know, there's a lot of information on this page, but it's intended to be what I've sort of shared here, both an overview, an opportunity for people to take action and become part of something, for them to learn ongoingly. We refresh this as needed. So, you know, we're curating a conversation and we keep it going. We have something called Tree Trivia Tuesdays, where through our communications team, all our social media channels are enlivened with tree information, right? And we continue to connect the dots, if you will. You know, green infrastructure, when we kicked off, you know, in 2011, green infrastructure was the first thing that we addressed as Sustainable Jersey City. We have created the first demonstration projects in the city for rain gardens and for a green wall that we built in partnership with a developer, which was 35 by 11 on the side of a building. And based on what the Botanic Garden moss scientists, because it was all moss, told us, it was equivalent to filtering, you know, what would normally be done by 276 trees. So we were advocating that we should do a lot more green walls, you know, in Jersey City too. So our green infrastructure program is a three-legged stool. It's streetscapes, rain gardens and bioswales, it's buildings, green roofs and green walls, and then trees onto its own. And in any given year, any one of those three or more can be activated. These last 2 years, we're very focused on trees. So let's go back. I'm almost done with my piece, I think, here. Let's see what, okay. So again, citizen science, we're in love with it. It's not only relevant to, you know, our trees initiative, but we are, you know, all of our projects roll up to emissions reduction, green infrastructure, or waste streams, right? And what we're trying to do is also inspire around residential waste stream and Jersey City. We have a very high contamination rate here for recycling. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is applying what we've learned in, you know, crowdsourcing some data collection to other initiatives as well. So again, you know, we just had another training last night. We're up to about 500 volunteers across 35 neighborhoods. We have an internship program with St. Peter's University. We do a lot of engagement, as I mentioned, and we have a formal training program for our tree mappers. You can't get on our platform without first being trained, right? So coordination with the largest parks group, which is an umbrella organization for all member parks in Jersey City. We have about 60 parks the city of Jersey City likes to claim. I would say a third of those are pocket parks. And we, you know, are noting that, you know, it's really difficult to get community groups online and rowing in the same direction. So of the, let's say 40 remaining parks in the city, there are about 25 or 20, between 25 and 28 member parks that are part of the Jersey City Parks Coalition. So that's a good chunk to work with, trying to do that inventory for, right? Again, I think we're up to, is it about 7,300 trees? Is that the right number, Tom? We there about that, I think?
About that, I mean, we're going to see it in a second during the demo, but we're definitely more than 7,300. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, it's been estimated that there are about 10 or 12,000 street trees in Jersey City. You know, it's going to be very helpful to, as we go into the fall, and we're certainly prepared because this is a living database to, ongoingly, trees are removed, they die, new trees are planted to maintain that inventory year after year. But we're thinking, least of all, we'll have a good roadmap for the street tree inventory at the end of this season. And the opportunity, which Tom is going to show you on the platform, what we've done is give people, and that's part of the engagement strategy also, different ways to look at their trees. We're trying to push out on ownership, right? So not only at the municipal level, fighting the good fight in terms of, more funding, better legislation, helping to sort of strategize around maintenance opportunities, like suggesting stuff like private-public partnerships, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But certainly, offering up an economic view. So what is the monetized value in addition to the sustainability metrics, which is one of the big reasons we opted for the OpenTreeMap. We have an eco-benefits calculator, which is the same one New York City uses. It's very robust. The people behind that are Davey and the US Forest Service. So a lot of credibility there. It provides sustainability metrics, but also the monetized equivalent value, and that's annual. So if we can sell the business case for urban forestry investment based on what would look like ultimately a minimum of $1 million per year in return on investment, for either new and or maintenance efforts, we think that we, have a good case. It's not to say that anybody's going to listen, but we at least will have the data, and it is a model for other municipalities, we think, both from the citizen engagement side, but really the technology and the business case that we're building. I would presume that other municipalities would want to do the same. Everybody has the same concern about where they're going to put their money and their efforts and how best to approach that in a triaged way. So the next slide here. Okay, so I'd reached out to the US Forest Service New York City field station to look for we're a very, what I would like to call energized group. So if we're looking at, a big project like this, and we're seeing the potential of it, we immediately started to look for funding partners. So I had reached out to the US Forest Service through some associations I have, and we began to talk about, well, what are you doing and what are we doing? And I understand that you've done a few of these, stewardship projects. Could you talk to me about that? The US Forest Service New York City field station is responsible for a product by the USFS, which is called a Stewardship Map, StewMap, quick reference. And basically what they do, and the way that we were conceiving this, is to take the concept of, because there are multiple layers on our OpenTreeMap of what's going on with trees across neighborhoods, parks, business districts, with some drill down capabilities. We thought, wouldn't it be cool if we added a layer to the map that would point to what organizations are involved with environmental stewardship and whether they were working citywide or in certain sections of the city. So we went after, we partnered with them, spent a couple months writing what I thought was one of the best proposals. And of course I'm biased, but it was a very positive process with a great proposal. We sent it to the tree fund, and they said they had just been inundated with so many proposals. So we took that as an invitation to start shopping it around, which we're still doing. So that gave us, we don't stand still, you know, the idea to do it ourselves, you know, in a way that would reflect that layer with some, you know, useful information. But the piece that was going to be missing, of course, which the U.S. Forest Service is, you know, very learned and savvy about, is the social research component. So we took on the idea of, let's use our citizen engagement, let's get stewardship going, let's reflect that on the map in some which way and mobilize the conversation. We can do the social research later. So that's where we took it. Next slide, please. What I think this is more about is your slide, Tom, right? Am I handing the baton over?
I think so. So thank you, Deb. We're actually going to now step through OpenTree. You can actually see this picture is from a few months ago. We already have like so many more trees. So I'm going to take everyone through a demo of our OpenTreeMap. So thank you, Deb. That was excellent. And now we're going to walk through the platform itself and what the platform looks like. So OpenTreeMap is an open source platform, and that basically means that Azavia, they've released their code out for the world to use, and anyone who wanted to would be able to go and take this code and make additions to it. So we took that opportunity to kind of make that code our own a little bit. And we made a few feature changes. We fixed a bunch of bugs. Actually, recently, we've upgraded the entire system. So it's about a 5 or 6 year old system, and we've gone through, cleaned everything up, and upgraded everything. And we'll go through some of the future enhancements that we're planning to make. But we're going to start off on how this works, right? We're going to start off on the map. And we can see here, immediately, we see a nice big map of Jersey City. So on our Jersey City map, we're going to see that we have all of these dots on here. And each of these dots is going to represent either a tree or an empty tree pit. In this case, green is for tree, and the pink is for an empty tree pit. Now, every single one of these is actually mapped by a volunteer, and we'll go through what that looks like in a second, and it's a very cool process. So every single one of these, and you could see when our volunteers go out and map a park, for example, they really map a park. They kill these parks. It's really amazing to watch, and to watch this map grow. There's another park over here. So when we look at this, right, we see that there's a lot of trees all throughout the city. And that's great, but we wanted to enhance the map a little bit more. So cities more and more are having these open data portals. They release data to just citizens to use as they see fit. And a lot of the data that we see from Jersey City is mapping data. And with mapping data, we can look at things like the Jersey City wards. So we can actually separate all of our trees into the individual wards. We can also take a look at the parks. So we can actually look at where the individual parks are and look at where these trees are mapped in the parks. We also have our neighborhoods, and I'll undo both of these, our special improvement districts. We have a GIS expert who helps with some of these different pieces and cleans them up from the city for things like the names. And we're able to load that directly into OpenTreeMap. So, whatever GIS layers you would have, we would be able to actually put directly into OpenTreeMap. And what's really cool about this, as we'll see, it is flashy and it does look really cool, but we're also able to use these layers to then do calculations on them so that we can show a breakdown of all of the different trees and the eco benefits by any of these different layer breakdowns, which is really cool for us. We have additional mapping layers. We actually integrate with 3 different maps. We use Google, we use Esri Maps, we use Bing Maps. There's a very long technical reason why that I won't get into, but we can integrate with a ton of different maps. In the nature of open source, we like OpenStreetMap as well as our default, just for open source purposes. And then we'll see on the right, the eco benefits. Now this is coming from an eco benefits calculator. that was, as Deb had mentioned, written with the U.S. Forestry Service and Azavia and Davey Trees as well. We'll see. I'm going to get into some future enhancements, but right now, this version, it's about 5 years old, I believe, based on, I'm sure plenty of people here have read the paper on all of these different, the allometric equations that they use to actually create these calculations. And basically, the U.S. Forestry Service went out over like an 11-year span and looked at, I think it was like 14,000 trees. And through looking at those 14,000 trees, we're able to come up with these metrics throughout different parts of the country that all we really need is to know the location, to know the diameter, and the species. And through those 3 pieces of information, we're able to generate all of these metrics. Now their new version, which we are working with them on to integrate that into OpenTreeMap, that actually uses canopy coverage as well and condition of the tree, but also those same things. So you can see as well, by the way, data quality is very important. If we want these numbers to be right, data quality is important. And we're going to come back to that data quality idea. Clicking any of these trees, you'll also see the details for that one individual tree directly on the side. Uses the exact same eco-benefits calculator. It's all the same pieces. And we're able to get an idea for, look at this cherry tree, realizing $56 of save value from that one tree. It's very cool. And we actually have an intern this year. And this idea came from Deb had seen this somewhere, to look at total benefits throughout a tree's lifetime and to try to estimate that. So that's a cool little thing. We have an intern working on that we're planning on adding this summer.
Oh, cool,
So
Tom.
it's gonna be very cool. We're getting set up for it. So let's look at the process of adding a tree. So our volunteers go out in the field. Now this is on a phone. We just use a mobile website right now. We have looked at making it into an app, but we just need more expertise in app development. And I'm not quite an app developer, although learning. So right now it's just a mobile website and it looks identical. But let's look at the add a tree process. So to start off, a user is going to either use their current location, they're going to put in an address, or they can just put it directly on the map.
This, by the way, just to understand this, everybody is doing this on their smartphone. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
right?
They just go to the website on the phone. It looks identical except for a phone. So it's all made to be mobilely optimized, and we call it mobile first development, where we make sure that it looks really good on a phone. So this looks very slick on a phone. So they put their pointer on there, right? So now we have our tree that we're saying is, well, not in the water. It's on some tree area. And now we have all the information that they're going to add. So from talking to some tree experts like Kieran and some other people who are really good at tree identification, we've decided that we're going to have all of our volunteers take 3 photos of trees. Every single tree is going to have a photo of the tree shape, the tree bark, and a leaf of the tree. They're also going to put in the species. Now we actually start off just showing, because originally there's like 100 species on this thing. It's way too big. So we decided we have a small subset of common species. We suggest those first. So they put in their tree photos, which we can see as a required field. They put in their species, or they could mark it as an empty site, which also takes a photo. They can also make all species available. You can see this drop down's huge now. And then we have our tree mappers add the diameter, which again, remember, species and diameter is going to make that eco benefit. So we need these things to be good. We need these to be validated, and we need every single tree to have a diameter. We have other required fields like the tree height, the canopy height. We include the condition as well. And right now we have 3 conditions. The iTree API has 7, but we're sticking with 3 right now: healthy, unhealthy, and dead. Another required field. We have some other interesting fields, and we'll go through adding fields. It's the easiest thing. We can add a new field in like 2 minutes, and it'll just be applied to all future trees. But you can see we wanted to help the forester out, so we added a few additional fields that we can now report on for the forester. Things like roots with a sidewalk issue, canopy power lines issue, right? We have to know those. PSC&G is going to come in if there's an issue with that, and they're just going to prune the tree, down a lot. So we want to make the forester aware of where we're seeing these particular issues. We have planting site information, and we do have a little bit of stewardship information, but we'll get into that later. And then from there, they'll hit next, and the tree's created. And that's the main map. So next we're going to take a look at, sorry, everything goes to sleep on my computer to save memory here. So next we're going to take a look at an individual tree, right? So a tree mapper goes and they map their tree. And now what we're going to see is, this is the detail page for an individual tree. We're going to see our diameter. We have our species name. We have our 3 photos. Now this is a really important section. Remember, we're a data management platform. And as a data management platform, we need to keep track of all data, including data changes, right? This is not a snapshot or a point in time. This is a living and breathing database. So for that reason, we actually audit every single change that happens across every tree. So let's say that, we had a recent thing come up about, what if a tree is removed? Well, we actually can audit that, and a tree could be deleted on here, and we would audit that information. What if something happens 2 years down the road and the tree is no longer healthy, right? Something happened where it got pruned and is now unhealthy. We could have a tree mapper come in, update that, and we would actually see that history of everything that's happened to that tree directly through our platform. Other than that, we see our normal, right, the eco benefits, the exact same thing we saw on the other page. And we even have a nice little comment section in case anyone wants to comment on a tree. There's also actually, you can also favorite trees. And we're looking at some really interesting community engagement ideas around things like favoriting trees and tree walks that we can get to as well. What else is there here? So the next thing that we want to dive into, and users can edit this tree information as well directly through this page, just exactly as you would expect from a normal data management website. So next is really probably the biggest feature that we've added. And that is looking at iNaturalist, right? So, we talked about this data management idea and this data quality idea. But tree mappers, how do we ensure the data quality on species, right? We feel pretty confident that trunk diameter is going to be a reasonable thing for someone to measure, and that we can put data quality checks around trunk diameter through things like the U.S. Forestry Service's Urban Tree Database. We can take that data and, using some simple math, we can put some outlier detection, basically looking at weird points that have weird diameters, and we can flag those. But how do you handle that for species? And this was a really big thing that we struggled with in the past. So we've actually integrated our application with iNaturalist, which is a citizen science website, really the biggest citizen science website for species identification on the planet right now. Just millions of identifications and observations of all kinds of different species. We're using it in particular for trees. And it works out great for us because every time a tree mapper maps a tree, we're actually going to submit the photos and the species directly to iNaturalist. And we'll see here, right, we have our user with a ton of observations. And through this platform, we can actually have members of the community go and suggest identifications as well. And we use a consensus-based algorithm. And all that means is, as long as I have a majority vote of at least 3 people, we're going to say this is a good species. So in this case, right, we would say this is a confirmed species because we have at least three identifications, and at least 2 of them are in agreement. So we really like this platform. It lets us, we can use interns, for example, and we can have interns from local colleges go and help with species identification. We can have members of the iNaturalist community, which is a massive community. And some of them really are tree, like you'll look at the number of identifications they've made, thousands of tree identifications. And we can actually check that as well in our algorithm, where we then confirm species. We can look and make sure that it's not just some random person trying to mess up our data. We can check how many observations and identifications they've made, or we can whitelist users so that if we have interns, we're actually able to whitelist those usernames and say that it's a trusted source. So we have a lot of controls around how we're handling species identification. And we'll get to, in the upcoming features, even more controls that we're adding. So the next thing we're going to look at in here, I think this was another tree. This was another iNaturalist thing. We're going to look at the management side of the platform. And on the management side of the platform in particular, so as you know, we add users only once they've completed training. So we keep this list very pristine from our perspective. We make sure everyone is trained. And again, data quality. And this is how we ensure data quality in a citizen science platform. But the other piece I really wanted to show is our management platform for additional fields. This is how we add additional fields. It's through a management platform. So any field that we would want, in a click of a couple buttons, we're actually able to add new fields and new custom fields to a tree. And once these fields are added, anyone out in the field mapping trees will actually see these different fields and be able to add them to trees going forward, or to edit past trees to be able to use these fields. And it's very simple to add these particular fields, very flexible as well. So just a brief thing I had to cover, because that's a huge thing for us in this platform. You know, adding fields for the forester. You know, we came up with a few fields, we added them, took 2 seconds. We've deleted fields in the past that weren't really that useful for us, and that's okay. It's all a learning process, right? And as we learn more through this, we're able to very quickly pivot and change how we're managing this in order to meet those needs. The last piece we wanted to go through on the platform itself is the dashboard. And Deb had alluded to this earlier, right? How do we show all of the information in a really interesting manner? It's still version 1 of our dashboard, and we're always looking for ways to update it. But through here, we can actually look at, for example, different neighborhoods. And you can just select a handful of neighborhoods and be able to see some basic metrics on this, such as what are the tree counts by individual neighborhoods? What are the biggest species counts that we see in that neighborhood? Tree conditions. And we actually at one point put a forester report together that involved these tree conditions plus those additional conditions for alerting the JC forester. And you can see real quickly, we can actually look at the count of dead and unhealthy trees in each of our different areas. And we have tree diameters as well. We use tree diameters as a proxy for age, roughly as a proxy for age. This is still a rough approximation on it, but it gives a really interesting view as a whole. You know, as we keep cutting down some older trees and planting a lot of new ones, you know, you'll see in certain areas that it's very disproportionate, the size ranges. And we have a lot of really small trees in some areas and not a lot of really big ones. So these areas, not so much, but we have some that are just all small trees, right? And that's, you know, this goes back to how many trees they're cutting down, right? Really good proxy for that metric. And the last section here is the eco benefits. Same thing we've seen everywhere else. Just now we can break it down to individual areas. So you can look at how your eco benefits look in your individual neighborhood, or maybe the park nearby you, right? We have a park layer. And again, all of these different layers over here, these aggregation levels, these are the exact same layers that we had on that main map. So not only can you visualize it on the map, you can then visualize that data here and really get an idea for each of these different areas. So that's the main part of the demo. And I wanted to go through just a few more pieces on here. So I believe the slide before was our, okay, so different things that we've added over the past basically year. We've added iNaturalist integration, which has been amazing for us. And it's really helped our tree mappers have confidence when they're making species identifications, because they know that even if there's a problem, we're going to back them up, right? There's going to be a fallback that they can use. We've cleaned up a lot of pieces, various bug fixes, adding things like 3 photos, just a lot of little cleanups here and there that have been really great. A full software upgrade. So we're using some really modern software. And as we continue to upgrade it, that means that for some of the different tools that we're using, we get the latest and greatest features. It's really important for things like maps. Using a 5-year-old map, a 5-year-old mapping application is going to have some problems that tend to get fixed over 5 years, especially on some of the newer phones. So we make sure to keep up with the technology, and we've upgraded everything. Then we have the public dashboard, as we saw. That's a new piece, and we think that looks great. We're really excited to continue to add to that feature. So we also wanted to go through, I think actually this is from the GIS piece, so we'll save that for the GIS section. So I wanted to go through some upcoming features. Some of the big features that we're looking at this summer: updated eco benefits calculation. So the U.S. Forestry Service, the exact same calculations they're using for iTree, they have now actually released those as what we call an API. So through that API, we're going to be able to use the latest and greatest calculations that they're using. And that means our calculations will actually be the exact same as what you would find in the iTree platform. So we're really excited about that. I've been testing that out, a lot of really cool data throughout it. This next one is my biggest summer project that I'm very excited about: AI species identification. I'm sure we've all seen it. We have all these phone apps that go when you take a picture of a plant and it says, oh, it's a dandelion, right? So we want to add that exact same idea for trees. And we can make this thing specific for trees, especially because we have these 3 individual photos. We're aiming for roughly 80% accuracy, which is going to be great. That's a really great thing, especially for AI. And we're going to use the exact same techniques that all of those different applications use. We've done our research. We're just gathering our thousands of tree images between iNaturalist and our platform, and we're going to make AI species identification. How we use this, still a little up in the air. Maybe it'll be a recommendation for users that aren't so confident, but maybe it's also used for consensus. So we have a confident user, we put it up on iNaturalist, we use an AI algorithm that then says, hey, this is that as well. And we have one member of the community, and that means that we can actually make our time to consensus decrease significantly. And that's going to be really great.
Tom, can you explain to folks what AI is?
So AI, right, artificial intelligence, it's really a subset of that we call machine learning. And effectively what you do is you have algorithms, right? We have a program and we're going to feed it thousands upon thousands of images, right? I'm looking at about 5,000 images per species, and we're feeding it thousands of images, and it's trying to learn the features of that image. And actually, there's a lot of research done on this, and we're working on the shoulders of giants here. We're actually basing it on something built by IBM that has been trained on like millions of images. And then we basically take something that has learned millions of images, and we say, okay, now learn just these trees. And it's a very successful approach. It's used in pretty much every industry that needs to look at a subset of photos. They use this approach, and we're doing the exact same thing. It's going to be really exciting. The personal dashboard, right? So one thing that we try to do is motivate our volunteers. And one thing we've been thinking of for this is a dashboard for individuals to see all of that same dashboard we saw, except for just the trees that you've mapped. So you can look and see all the contributions you've made. Now, Deb has mentioned before some of these other projects that we're looking at, and this is huge because this is how we build community engagement. We actually want to take that personal dashboard and start mixing it with some of our other projects. So imagine if SJC has we have a few volunteer events, and for picking up trash, for example, well, we can integrate that with this platform as well, so that then your personal dashboard isn't just the trees you've mapped, it's all the community engagement you've been involved in. And any user could go on and see all of their community engagement in one place and see the contribution they're making to making Jersey City more beautiful. And we love that idea. We're really about community engagement, and that's going to be a huge feature for us this summer. To get through a couple others, I'll go to the bottom. Enhanced stewardship functionality, same idea. Keeping people engaged through this platform, showing them how they're contributing more, and giving them more ways to constantly contribute. So after all the trees are mapped, they can still do some other things to help Jersey City's canopy. See-click-fix integration.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't skip that.
Oh, definitely. So see-click-fix integration is another really big one, and we've done a lot of our research for this. It is possible. It will take a little work, but basically, instead of going to see-click-fix, you could submit your issues on OpenTreeMap, right? Getting, again, that community engagement, making it a sticky platform where people are going to always go to OpenTreeMap. Something's wrong with a particular tree or a tree pit. They can find that tree on OpenTreeMap, and they can actually submit to see-click-fix directly through there. So our platform bridges the gap between our volunteers and see-click-fix. Our forester loves see-click-fix. It is a really cool platform, and we want to really bridge the gap between the two. And then search functionality is just something we've been working on that's necessary, a necessary evil, but something that we constantly battle with. And last, I wanted to go through GIS. And this is another really cool piece to this. I had a couple maps. I had one earlier. We pulled this from another presentation. Remember, this is a data management platform. So if you have a GIS team, you can actually pull this data. So this is older data. This data was pulled directly from OpenTreeMap. All of the data in OpenTreeMap can be integrated with any of these GIS platforms, whether you're using QGIS or ArcGIS. We're using a GIS database, and we're using a very well-supported GIS database that's just used by anyone doing a lot of GIS, anyone bridging the gap between GIS and some really performant programming. So we integrate with all GIS platforms as well, and all of this data can hop on there. So with that is this is again this was the heat island effect, and we actually overlaid our trees again directly from OpenTreeMap. So really easy to integrate, and you get some really cool maps as a result. It helps that our GIS person's amazing, but she is amazing. But we do get some really good results as a feature to that. So Deb, do you want to finish it off?
Sure. That was great, Tom. That was really terrific. Every time I listen to you, it's like I'm listening to you for the first time. It's just really.
Thank you.
I always learn something.
Well, thanks. So I actually do also want to, and Deb, if you want to address this, we do have a Q&A question. Do you have a count of native trees versus invasive non-natives, and do you plan to have invasive replaced by natives? So that is a great question. We have the species, so we could, in theory, get that count. We don't have that count currently. I don't have that offhand, but through this data with the list of species, we would be able to derive that count. As for the plan to replace invasive by natives, that's going to be something we can fight for. But I'll let Deb take that answer.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because in our we were working on this project sort of in a level way of looking at all the parts of the city. And with the UHI, the urban heat island effect, and the air quality issues, it pulled us in the direction of a few of the environmental justice communities in Jersey City. And the very, first question they kept asking us, so it was really that they were more educated and onto this thing ahead of us, is are you going to try to restore the canopy with native trees? Like, is that what you're going to do? And I'm like, wow, that's a really good question. So I conferred with the New Jersey Tree Foundation. I said, well, what are the native trees? Which I have that list now, Tom, and for New Jersey, right? And that's something that we could do a lookup around. We obviously don't have the authority to make that decision as a policy initiative, but we can certainly make recommendations and show the opportunity to do that and provide some analysis about what is and what isn't, and, offer some, guidance through our partnership, with the New Jersey Tree Foundation and others. So that's, something to look at as an opportunity. Kieran, I would even want to confer with you on that. I'd like to know if there is an initiative out there across the state where that effort is kicking in on some level, any level at all.
Do you want me to address that now, or you want to talk about that afterwards?
Well, we have some time here, correct?
Well,
how are we doing on time?
we have 9 minutes left.
9 minutes. Okay. So we can talk about that then offline. What I wanted to do is allow, there's not a big close here. You know that what we're doing is evolving a really smart platform, and community engagement and the education aspect is part of that. What we're doing is graduating from just doing data collection on the inventory to training people up to be tree ambassadors in their neighborhoods, right? The stewardship around trees is going to hopefully be contagious to do other environmental stewardship activities, but we are starting with that very specifically within OpenTreeMap. There is an opportunity for folks to book some details about their stewardship activities. So for example, specific to planting sites, is it the case, these tree pits, some of which are empty, are they attending to them by virtue of picking up debris, weeding, watering, mulching? And we're taking up the flag because we think that there's a need for these compacted tree pits, with these struggling trees, to enliven the soil a bit. So we're introducing the idea of putting some biology back into the soil with some compost under that mulch. And we can take that on as a stewardship brigade in Jersey City to start to turn out some of these activities. So that's going to be our very next step. What I wanted to do is be able to ask the audience to reply in either the chat or the Q&A. I'd like to know if there are a lot of people out there, I'm not sure who's represented in the audience, but two things Tom and I are really interested in. How many of you use SeeClickFix in your municipality? The other is stewardship is hard, right? There are so many challenges associated with that. We have, for example, a forestry department. We have one broken water truck for all of Jersey City, right? We have one forester. We had a junior forester who recently left the city. There's not a big staff. There's not a maintenance plan in place because it's just overwhelming. So it's totally reactionary. If something needs to be done, then that triage activity happens by staff. We're thinking that we can addend efforts by having the Citizen Stewardship Brigade really be, at the ready, so to speak, to take up a little bit of the basics, right? You can't prune a tree in the city of Jersey City without training or the permission of a forester, but certainly debris removal, weeding, some compost to the tree pits and some mulching and certainly watering are things that we can overcome. In Jersey City, people aren't walking out the front of their building, with a watering can. You have high rises, you have, brownstones, people going up and down 3 or more flights of stairs aren't going to run up and down with a watering can. So watering by citizens is a little bit of an issue, but when you adopt a tree in Jersey City, you are making a 2-year commitment to water that baby tree and to keep the mulch attended to and debris removed and weed, because now you own that tree. So with the new planting in Jersey City, and what we're trying to educate people around is that you can't replace, a mature tree or take that down and then just replant a couple of baby trees. You're not going to get those eco benefits for 25 years. So what do we, you can't think of that as a remedy. Well, I took out this old tree, but I planted 2 young trees, and we had the challenge, which we had discussed with Kieran, who was, great and conferred with the PSE&G arborist, what medium-sized shade trees can be planted under power lines, because there was a movement toward replacing shade trees when they took them out with ornamentals, not offering any shade, right? So we're trying to move the needle inch by inch on this stuff. These are strong conversations, but we're really interested in learning too. So we'd like to understand if there's anybody out there mobilizing, community stakeholders to do stewardship activities, and what does that look like? Those are our 2 big questions.
So real quick, Deb, you got 2 no's on the SeeClickFix one of whom had never heard of SeeClickFix before. And I just want to maybe ask this question before we hit our 8:30 time. We usually go a little over if we need to, but I want to make sure we have everybody on for this one. If somebody is involved in stewardship in their own community, can they use this tool, or reach out to do an OpenTreeMap in their own community?
We actually are making this platform available for a modest stipend, in our view, to other municipalities. So we're a nonprofit organization by the Arbor Day Foundation standard of the volunteer, in kind hours that we've put into this and what we continue to do. We've probably put, they put a price tag that we sort of provided $225,000 worth of services here. So what we are trying to do is put this on autopilot as much as possible. It needs very little, care and feeding, but we are here for any municipality who would like to subscribe to it. The training comes with it and a degree of tech support, right? So this is something that we are, with some coaching from Kieran and our other advisor, who was the previous forester in Jersey City, opening this up to others. The DEP, who's been very kind in reviewing our platform, thinks that we have an award-winning platform here, and we agree.
I agree too.
Okay.
So there is a question in the chat too. Arati wants to know, how do we reach out if their municipality might be interested?
Right there in that closing slide is our
Wonderful.
email contact information. When at a loss, reach Kieran, right? Who knows how he has us on speed dial. So to the extent that if you put in the subject line, OTM, we'll know that OpenTreeMap, right? Please call, that'll ring our bell.
We also had a question in the Q&A just asking if you use tree diapers.
The municipality has, in some ways we're advanced, in other ways we're not. So Ryan Metz, who is the other advisor with Kieran on this project, who's the previous forester, had put together a document before he left Jersey City, which were a set of forestry standards back in 2018. And we're in the process now on the Shade Tree Committee of reviewing those, since they should have, it should be an annual update process to refine that. And one of the considerations, and this was a long discussion about whether to use tree, I guess you're talking about gator bags.
It's similar to gator bags, but it's a name brand, and it does something a little different from gator bags, but it's the same idea of slow releasing water.
Okay, so there is a, people are not liking them in Jersey City, for part of the reason being that people forget about them, they deflate, they then sort of settle in around the base of the tree, they become a piece of debris. So currently we have a 2-year warranty with the planting contractor, who's required to water trees. I'm not sure that he's doing a great job, but he is, by virtue of that contract, responsible if a tree dies to replace that tree within a 2-year period. They're not using gator bags, and they're going around with, a watering truck.
Yeah.
I see developers in Jersey City planting trees, which is now required, in our legislation. When you, as you finish a development project, every 25 feet, you need to plant a tree on the perimeter of that development project, and they're using gator bags.
I'd be willing to bet that a good proportion of those gator bags that developers have put down have never had a drop of water put in them.
I wouldn't bet against you on anything. So I'm probably
It's
right.
one thing to cart around a whole bunch of gator bags in your truck. It's a whole nother thing to buy a water truck.
Correct.
But the tree diaper is a little different from a gator bag. It soaks up the water like a sponge and then releases it into the soil like in a different way. So it doesn't stand tall like a gator bag. It's flatter against the ground. It's a little bit of a different system.
So it doesn't become a debris problem. It'll forever do its job.
Well, eventually it's temporary, like a tree, like a gator bag. You would eventually take it off once the tree was established.
Okay. So that's interesting. A tree diaper. I've never heard that term.
Yeah, it's a
But
brand name. They're around.
Okay, we'll look that up. Thank you.
Can you just, I guess, real quick explain what C-Click-Fix is?
Sure. I'm going to hand that one to Tom because you've crawled into this app now. But generally speaking, just to kick you off, we have something in Jersey City called a resident response unit, which is part of the call center. It is the call center for the city when people have a question or a complaint about something. So Tom, you want to tell them what C-Click-Fix is and how the Resident Response Center uses that?
That's basically it. So in C-Click-Fix, effectively, that's where anyone in the community is going to post different problems throughout. So if you go on, you'll see people complaining about garbage in a lot, right? Or garbage on the street, or a problem with a tree, or something that's broken. Anything that they want the city to come in and take care of is going to go on C-Click-Fix. So
it's basically an app.
Yeah, and then the forester is going to look at that, and the forester who looking at that will be able to see what are people complaining about for trees, and then he'll know like what route to take to remedy them. And it's a pretty simple system. You can just take a picture and put a little blurb on there, and then it goes right to the city, and the city's able to prioritize it and respond back to it. And it just helps maintain maintain maintenance issues.
It's for anything, right? Like
potholes. The Resident Response Center,
everything.
You can either call them or book your complaint or inquiry through C-Click-Fix. They direct it. It's like Command Central. They direct it to the proper division, office, individual to get that remedied. There is now, a tighter set of reporting associated with that. We have something called the Quality of Life Task Force in Jersey City, which is now overseeing the, the categories of inquiry and complaint, and also the turnaround time. So there is now some interest in really optimizing the use of it, where before it was a little bit more passive and there was less accountability. Some complaints could go unanswered, but now there's a new commitment to use it as a monitoring tool and an opportunity to do better.
This may be a side question to what we just talked about. Anything with the tree mapping system, are you considering, or have you considered tracking tree pests? Spotted lanternfly comes to mind, or emerald ash borer. Is that something? It could actually fall into either one of those categories, the C-Click-Fix or the OpenTreeMap.
Correct. And you take it, Tom. Go ahead.
So we did look at this, and actually that has been a suggestion that came up. We brought this up to our forester at the time, and one of the concerns was then people being able to properly identify what the actual invasive species was. And I know that was one of their main concerns around adding that particular feature and it adding value. It is something that we could add. And again, we did look into it. And from a feature perspective, we definitely can. We've just avoided it because the forester at the time didn't see a lot of value in that particular field for him. So this goes back to the data quality issue, and how do we address that for a totally different type of thing that we need to look at species for.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I'd recommend anybody who thinks they've identified an invasive pest to take a picture and contact the DEP.
Or Department of Ag too, right? For
Yeah.
like spotted lanternfly would be the Department of Ag,
Yeah.
which there's information on. So. Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions, or are we sort of leaning into the close of the program?
Well, we don't have any more in the Q&A. The only other one that I was curious about are what your plans are for data management once you've finished the inventory. Do you have plans to do like a resurvey of the city, like in 5 years or something?
You know, what's been interesting for us is, given such an exciting platform and a tool, you know, there isn't a culture for, you know, sort of collaboration on some of the decision making for this. That would seem the obvious thing to do, right? We have a living database that, in other instances, in the feedback that I'm understanding. So for example, and I'm not sure, maybe you can comment on this, Kieran, but when a city retains, let's say, Davy trees to do an inventory, whether it's a full inventory or in Jersey City's case, it appears that they're doing a sampling. You know, that's one approach. If you do a full inventory, that's another approach. And then you offer that report and then they go away, right? So if what we have on the ground are neighborhood tree ambassadors who are always looking at keeping that refreshed, right? It's not something that we're going to have to then undertake all over again in 5 years, but it will be an ongoing process, which eliminates the need to, you know, do a census. If we keep this up, and the opportunity to keep it up also hooks in that stewardship component, right? So is this of interest to the city of Jersey City? Who knows? You know, again, we have a seat at the table, the Shade Tree Committee, but it wasn't the case where Forestry, who preferred to use See, Click, Fix, and the Sustainability Office, who's doing their own thing. It was really Health and Human Services who pointed to the fact that the deterioration trend is a quality of life and public health issue. I like what I'm seeing. This looks awesome. I want to support it, and had gotten into the canoe with us. So the conversation is changing. You know, who knows what's going to happen next, but we are making this available to the city if they want to use it.
Awesome.
I would also suggest anybody that's on the webinar that would be interested in bringing this to their town, you guys put together a really nice, simple brochure that's on the website that talks a little bit about what it means to be one of those ambassadors. I think that would be helpful for people to maybe look at and bring forth if they're looking to do this in their town.
I'd love to have an offline conversation with you, Lori, about that.
Sure.
Just so that I understand, you know, it sounded like to me what you were saying was from a tree ambassador or a tree mapper's perspective, that is it what they do or how they feel about what they do? Are we looking for testimonials, or what were you thinking? Because we have a brochure on this.
Yeah, I was actually trying to direct people to that fantastic brochure on your website, so that if somebody in the audience was, I think, did you just put it up on the chat?
Yeah, I just
Kieran's
linked to it.
Really great. Yeah, so I was suggesting anybody that's on this webinar that is looking to do this maybe in their town to take a look at that brochure, because it's very simple, but it's informative, and I think it's a great incentive. Like, because it might be overwhelming for people to say, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. You know, I don't know every tree like Kieran does, but you make it really simple. And I applaud you on that brochure creation. It's pretty good. So
it's the like Arbor Day brochure, right? The 2021 Arbor Day tree mapping program.
Yeah, that what was interesting is that you were able to grab that off of our project page, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it
That's-
opens
Yeah.
up as a PDF.
Yes, very good. I just noticed our Google Drive reference there. So what I want to do is change
Yeah,
that to a PDF view.
Right, make sure nobody can edit it.
Yeah, well, it's view only, but you know, when people see a Google Drive iteration of this, they feel a little funny about what they're looking at.
Right.
Thank you for that, Kieran. That's great. But we're all friends here, so don't anyone be, you know, feeling funny about our Google Drive. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's good. This is good. Is that what you meant then, Lori?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Again, you know, the trick in much of this, people learn in different ways. They hear things differently. You know, some people are visual learners. You know, some people are, you know, totally hands-on. They didn't get a propeller on their tail and really get going until their hand was held with one of the neighborhood captains. Other people were like off to the races on their own, and they don't want to work with groups. Some people really only want to work with groups, you know, and that was a little challenging, of course, during COVID. But now we're doing more in-field mentorship events. That was something I'd forgotten to mention, and that is exquisitely successful. That's really creating another surge with this effort. You know, if you can do this with your comrades, you know, and do some group learning, there's someone there to ask a question of, it actually is very facilitating.
Great
Good for
stuff.
good for now.
I think we're good for now, but based on some of the
Did Tom
comments,
and I have to give you our phone numbers?
yeah, I think that would be great. And I mean, everybody is saying what an excellent presentation it was and how interesting and informative it was. And I also think a lot of people want to know like what's coming in the future. So I think we're going to need to have an update. I think you guys are going to have to tell us how things are going and definitely some of those next steps. I think people would be interested.
So why don't we do two things here? Let's just fix our presentation to include our phone numbers. And let's add the brochure link to the presentation, and then we'll share the presentation with you and you can distribute it in whatever way you feel you'd like to do that.
Wonderful idea.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And the recording will also be made available, right?
Yes. Yes. What I can do is take the recording of the webinar, include the brochure when you have it as a PDF, and include contact information and send it out to everybody that was registered this evening.
That's fabulous.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we'll
that's
touch
great.
base afterwards. So everybody that's on can expect that shortly. Not tonight, but obviously within a week or so.
Okay, that's terrific.
Sound good?
And do you have a 30-second response to my question, Kira, before we close the evening in terms of a trend toward replacing trees with natives?
I think there is a trend. But it's an open debate because there is an argument for not necessarily invasive, you know, usually not invasive, but non-natives sometimes are better suited to urban environments. Like for instance, if you're going to put a tree in a 3-foot square planting pit in the middle of a parking lot, honey locust is probably going to do better than almost anything else you can put there. Now, if you can get a native to compete well there and be healthy, then great. But if you've got people suffering from asthma because there's just no canopy, and you're putting these trees into, you know, this concrete environment, I'd argue that you already are pretty far away from native environment there. And if you can get a tree that performs better, you will probably get more ecosystem services from it than a native tree that's going to struggle in that same site and not live as long.
Absolutely. Why did you tie in the asthma rate?
Because that's something that's always on my mind when I think about urban heat island and equity in ecosystem services with green infrastructure. That's,
Right.
you
So
know,
how does that relate to natives though?
well, what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily, because if you can get, I would say that it's more important to have a productive, healthy tree
Yes.
to get ecosystem services from it than to have a native tree. So if you can get a native tree that's going to do well in the planting site, I would say that should be what you plant, because then you're going to get the environmental benefits from like pollinators and other animals and other things in the environment that use our native trees. But if you can't get a native tree in that site because it won't compete well, or it's just so altered from native soil and native growing conditions that a native tree is not going to do well in that site, then I think you're better off having a non-native, preferably non-invasive tree that's going to do well, because it's going to be more likely to provide better ecosystem services, which ultimately in those areas I think should be the primary. If you're in an urban environment and it's heavily denaturalized, it's just all concrete and buildings and stuff and roads, I think, and we've got things like asthma and stormwater problems. I think it's more important that we focus on the ecosystem services that the tree can provide. And to me, that means having a tree that can do well in the planting site.
Okay. So there's no relationship between asthma rates and species.
Not that I'm aware of. I
Okay,
think there
great.
might be, because they say that some trees are better at filtering like pollutants from the air than others.
Yes.
I don't think there's a whole lot of research on that. I've heard about ginkgo being good with that, but
Yes.
which is not a native, but also non-invasive.
All right.
But I don't think there's a whole lot of research on like all the species that are native to New Jersey with that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and Clark mentioned some trees give off more pollen, which is not good for many people, which is a good
Right.
point.
Yeah, it would be good to have a short list of those, as something to lend insight to. Certainly, for example, what we don't want to do in the corridors that we've discovered are the heavy asthma rates in Jersey City, is plant trees that put out a lot of pollen. If we have a choice to suggest something that would thrive, and potentially, the consideration would be, do we have a choice in something that would thrive in that particular corridor and provide the ecosystem services we're looking for, but is also native? But secondarily, we don't want to plant trees that shed a lot of pollen in those respiratory ailment corridors.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, cool.
For sure.
Thank you.
I think we're good then, right?
I think so.
Thank you, Deborah.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Tom.
Yes.
Yeah, great
Thank you,
information.
Lori.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Kieran, thank you, Andy.
Thank you so much.
That's really, that's really great.
There's some really
You
interesting.
guys are great hosts.
Well, it was a great presentation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we look forward to an update soon. And again, we will definitely put this out to everybody with your contact information and a recording, and definitely the brochure. So
Okay, terrific.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks for spending some time with us. It was great to get to know you and all the great work you're doing. So
Well, thank you so much for being so receptive. So this is a good
Excellent.
audience. Everyone have a good evening.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Take care, everybody.
Okay, good
Bye.
night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.